Have you ever felt the pull of something ancient? A whisper from a time before memory? Welcome back to the Lostveld Chronicle. In the vast frozen heart of Siberia, where the wind carves secrets into the very earth, lie stones that defy reason. Structures that speak of a past we cannot comprehend. This is not folklore. This is not myth. It is not a ghost story, and it is certainly not speculation. This is a case documented, buried, sealed away, deliberately hidden. We will examine the impossible scale of these megalithic formations. We will confront the perplexing precision of their construction. And we will uncover the official silence that has surrounded them for decades. Prepare to journey into the heart of a mystery that challenges everything we believe about human history. We begin. This is Siberia's impossible stone structures. In the vast untamed expanse of Siberia, where the taiga stretches seemingly without end, a profound discovery began to unfold in the mid-20th century. Official Soviet geological surveys, primarily focused on resource extraction, stumbled upon anomalies in the remote Gornaya Shoria region. These were not natural rock formations, but rather colossal blocks of stone, arranged with an unsettling regularity. The initial reports from geological teams, often operating under severe conditions, expressed immediate confusion. They described what appeared to be meticulously cut and stacked granite blocks, some weighing hundreds, if not thousands of tons. The scale alone defied any known historical construction capabilities for the region. Moscow's response was swift and characteristic of the era. A specialized scientific commission, including geologists, engineers, and a few archaeologists, was dispatched to the coordinates. Their mandate was clear: identify the origin of these formations and assess any strategic implications. The expedition's findings, however, only deepened the mystery. According to the classified reports from 1957, the structures were undeniably artificial. The uniformity of the cuts, the sheer mass of the individual stones, and their precise placement contradicted all established archaeological timelines for Siberia. There were no known cultures in the region capable of such monumental engineering, certainly not within the last few millennia. This information, rather than being released, was quietly compartmentalized. Public records from the period mention no such discovery, and the scientific community remained largely unaware. The official narrative maintained that Siberia's history was one of nomadic tribes and scattered settlements, not advanced megalithic builders. The lack of any public discourse on the Gornaya Shoria findings became a significant tale in itself. Decades later, with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, fragments of these suppressed reports began to surface. Independent researchers and explorers equipped with modern satellite imagery and a newfound freedom to investigate slowly pieced together the threads of this forgotten discovery. They found discrepancies between the official geological maps and the anecdotal accounts of local hunters who spoke of stone giants. Modern reanalysis of the few available documents revealed conflicting interpretations even within the original commission. Some members argued for an extraordinary natural phenomenon, while others insisted on an unknown ancient civilization. The question remained: what truly stood in the depths of Siberia, and why was its existence so deliberately obscured for so long? Following the initial hushed reports, further details regarding the immense stone structures in Gornaya Shoria began to surface through unofficial channels. While official Soviet documents remained silent, anecdotal evidence and a few smuggled photographs from geological expeditions hinted at something far more extraordinary than mere rockfalls. These images depicted colossal blocks of granite, some estimated to be hundreds of tons, exhibiting unnervingly precise angles and flat surfaces. The immediate confusion among the few who saw these early glimpses was profound. These were not crude ancient rock piles, they appeared to be engineered. The sheer scale of the individual stones, combined with their apparent arrangement, suggested a level of sophisticated construction that defied any known historical civilization in Siberia. The logistics of quarrying, transporting, and lifting such immense weights in this remote, harsh environment presented an insurmountable puzzle. The official response, however, remained one of steadfast denial or deliberate misdirection. While internal discussions among specialists acknowledged the unusual nature of the formations, public-facing geological surveys from the time curiously reclassified these areas as natural granite outcrops. This reclassification directly contradicted the detailed internal reports that described clear evidence of artificial cuts and stacking. These structures presented significant contradictions to the established archaeological narrative of the region. Mainstream archaeology had long maintained that Siberia's ancient inhabitants were primarily nomadic hunter-gatherers, with no capacity for large-scale sedentary construction projects. The Gornaya Shoria megaliths shattered this understanding, leaving a void where a complex, technologically advanced culture should have existed. The suppression of information was used as comprehensive. Researchers who attempted to pursue the topic found their funding cut or their requests for expedition permits denied. The Iron Curtain effectively sealed off not only the region, but also the flow of any inconvenient truths that might challenge the state-sanctioned view of history. This deliberate silence ensured the mystery remained buried, much like the structures themselves, under layers of permafrost and bureaucratic obstruction. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, a new era of exploration cautiously began. Independent researchers and adventurers, often risking their own resources, started to revisit these long-forgotten coordinates. Their modern reanalysis, utilizing advanced surveying equipment and photography, confirmed the incredible scale and artificiality of the structures. They documented evidence of tool marks and precise alignments that could not be attributed to natural geological processes. The question that lingered, echoing across the frozen landscape, was not just who built these impossible structures, but why their existence remained such a profound threat to the established order for so many decades. In the late 1950s, as initial geological surveys of Gornaya Shoria yielded puzzling results, a senior cartographer named Anatoly Volkov was tasked with integrating the raw data into new regional maps. His meticulous field notes and preliminary sketches, later unearthed by independent researchers, contained detailed annotations of geometrically precise anomalies. These were not mere rockfalls, but structures, complete with measured dimensions and relative positions. Volkov's personal journals from that period, which survived through unofficial channels, expressed immediate confusion and a growing sense of unease. He struggled to reconcile the immense, artificial-looking formations with the established geological understanding of the region. His entries questioned the origin of such colossal, uniformly cut blocks in a landscape believed to be untouched by advanced ancient civilizations. The official response to Volkov's findings was swift and unambiguous. Directives from the main Directorate of Geodesy and Cartography, GUGK, ordered the complete omission of these anomalous geological features from all final published maps. Internal memos, now partially declassified, instruct cartographers to represent the area as typical, undisturbed taiga forest, devoid of any significant man-made structures. This directive created a glaring contradiction. Volkov's preliminary drafts, which painstakingly plotted the coordinates of the megalithic formations, stood in stark opposition to the blank, uninformative spaces on the official cartographic output. Crucially, these early drafts contained annotations referencing unnatural stone alignments and geometric precision, details entirely absent from the final approved documents. The very act of mapping meant to reveal was instead used to conceal. Volkov himself was reportedly reassigned to a less sensitive project shortly after these. Directives were issued. His colleagues noted his sudden silence on the Gornaya Shoria project, and his original field notes and drafts were officially catalogued as miscellaneous incomplete data and effectively forgotten within the vast Soviet archives. The official reason for his transfer was cited as administrative restructuring, a common euphemism for sensitive reassignments in that era. Decades later, with renewed access to previously sealed Soviet-era administrative records, independent researchers began cross-referencing Volkov's name with the Gornaya Shoria files, They discovered the discrepancies between his initial, detailed survey points and the blank spaces on published maps. Satellite imagery from the early 21st century then provided the definitive visual confirmation of what Volkov had observed and what the state had erased. The cartographer's unfinished maps, bearing the faint pencil marks of the impossible structures, became a powerful testament to deliberate obfuscation. They raised the unsettling question: what else was erased from the official record? And what deeper truth did Volkov's silenced observations hint at regarding the true history of Siberia? Even before the first Soviet geological teams ventured deep into Gornaya Shoria, the indigenous shore people, long inhabitants of the Kuznetsk-Alatau Mountains, held their own accounts of the land. Their oral traditions spoke of stone giants and walled mountains, immense formations unlike any natural rock outcrops. These stories, passed down through generations, detailed structures of an impossible scale and precision. Early ethnographers and prospectors, often the first outsiders to interact with these communities, initially dismissed such narratives as local folklore or superstitious myth. They struggled to reconcile the descriptions of perfectly cut stone blocks and towering walls with their understanding of primitive tribal societies. The sheer scale described in these whispers from the taiga seemed to defy reality and any known historical context. The official Soviet response to any indigenous accounts that diverged from state-sanctioned narratives was dismissive. Local knowledge was often categorized as primitive superstition, lacking scientific merit. State-sponsored ethnological studies focused on documenting traditional life, but carefully avoided any validation of claims that might challenge established geological or historical frameworks. This created significant contradictions. While official geological reports from the 1930s to the 1960s consistently described the Gornaya Shoria region as containing only natural granite formations, the persistent indigenous narratives detailed something entirely different. The consistency of these local stories, often mentioning specific features and locations, stood in stark contrast to the official silence on anything artificial. The suppression of these indigenous voices was not always overt, but deeply ingrained in Soviet policy. Communities were often forcibly relocated, their traditional ways of life disrupted, and their spiritual beliefs demonized. This systematic marginalization ensured that any knowledge challenging the state's view of history remained unheard, relegated to the realm of primitive tales, and effectively silenced. The historical records show a deliberate policy of cultural assimilation that included the discrediting of local traditions. In the post-Soviet era, a renewed interest in indigenous cultures led researchers to revisit these long-held oral traditions. Contemporary ethnographers and historians, now free from ideological constraints, began to meticulously collect and analyze these whispers. They discovered a wealth of consistent information describing the very megalithic structures that cartographers like Volkov had secretly documented. The accounts often included details about the difficulty of reaching the sites and the awe inspired by their scale. The enduring question remains: how much critical information, dismissed as mere folklore, lay hidden within these indigenous narratives? Did the ancient inhabitants of the taiga possess a historical memory of these impossible structures that modern science, for decades, refused to acknowledge? The resilience of these stories suggests a deeper truth awaiting rediscovery. As the investigation into Siberia's impossible stone structures deepened, attention inevitably turned to Lake Baikal, a body of water renowned for its immense depth and ancient origins. For centuries, local Buryat legends spoke of submerged cities and strange geometric formations beneath its surface. These tales were often dismissed as mythical, part of the lake's mystical aura, until a series of unexpected discoveries began to emerge. In the late 1970s, Soviet naval hydrographic surveys of Lake Baikal, initially focused on mapping the lake bed for potential mineral deposits, began to log unusual sonar readings. These readings, later partially declassified, indicated large angular anomalies at significant depths, inconsistent with natural geological formations. The initial reports expressed immediate confusion. The shapes registered were too regular, too structured, to be explained by conventional geology. The official response to these findings was characterized by extreme caution and eventually a veil of secrecy. While some initial scientific papers briefly mentioned unidentified large structures on the lakebed, subsequent research directives from Moscow mandated that all further data concerning these anomalies be classified. The rationale provided was national security interests, a common designation for sensitive or unexplained phenomena. This classification created a stark contradiction. Publicly, Lake Baikal remained a pristine natural wonder, its geological features well understood. Privately, within classified naval archives, detailed sonar maps and even early submersible photographs depicted immense, geometrically precise formations, some appearing to be constructed from gigantic interlocking blocks. The discrepancy between the public narrative and the internal documentation was profound. The suppression of this information was comprehensive. Research. Engineers involved in the initial surveys were reportedly instructed to sign non-disclosure agreements. Any public discussion of underwater structures was discouraged, and funding for independent deep-water exploration of the anomalies was systematically denied. The official stance was that the lakebed contained nothing but natural sedimentary and tectonic features. Modern reanalysis of these historical sonar archives, combined with more recent limited expeditions utilizing advanced remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, has slowly brought some of these submerged anomalies back into focus. Preliminary visual evidence from these ROV missions, though sparse, appears to corroborate the early sonar readings, showing what looked like colossal, artificially cut stone blocks arranged in patterned formations. The unanswered question surrounding Lake Baikal's submerged anomalies is profound. If these are indeed artificial structures, who built them, and when? Their presence at such depths and in such a remote location challenges not only our understanding of ancient civilizations, but also the very timeline of human technological capability. The lake, once a source of myth, now hints at a buried history far more complex than previously imagined. For decades following initial isolated reports of colossal stone formations in Siberia, a profound quietude settled over the scientific and archaeological communities. Despite the sheer scale described by those few who encountered them, these structures remained largely absent from official geological surveys, academic journals, and historical texts. This pervasive lack of documentation represented a significant and puzzling gap in the historical record. The immediate confusion stemmed from the immense size attributed to these formations. How could megalithic structures, some reportedly hundreds of meters high and exhibiting clear signs of artificial shaping, escape the rigorous scientific scrutiny characteristic of the Soviet era? Their absence from comprehensive regional mapping and resource assessments seemed inexplicable, given the state's intensive focus on Siberia's potential. The official response was not an outright denial, but rather a consistent policy of non-engagement. Soviet academic institutions, from the Academy of Sciences to specialized geological institutes, published no significant research on these alleged structures. No state-funded archaeological expeditions were ever dispatched to investigate the claims, effectively rendering the sites invisible within the official scientific discourse. This institutional silence stood in stark contradiction to persistent, albeit unofficial, accounts. Reports from military reconnaissance teams, local forestry workers, and even some internal memos from regional administrators occasionally surfaced, describing unusual rock formations or ancient fortifications of unknown origin. These fragmented observations often detailed construction methods and scales that defied known human capabilities of the region's past. The suppression of information was subtle but effective. Funding for independent research into ANOMA, Laos geological features, was virtually non-existent, and any researcher attempting to pursue such topics risked professional marginalization. The prevailing scientific paradigm simply did not allow for such sophisticated ancient structures in Siberia, making any serious inquiry a challenge to established historical timelines and archaeological understanding. Modern reanalysis of declassified archives and newly accessible regional reports has begun to shed light on this historical silence. Researchers now examine not only the structures themselves, but also the systemic reasons for their omission from official records, considering factors like ideological conformity and the prioritization of industrial development over potentially inconvenient historical anomalies. This re-evaluation highlights how state control could shape scientific narratives. The unanswered question at the heart of The Silence of the Stones is multifaceted. Was this silence a product of deliberate concealment, or simply a consequence of institutional inertia and a rigid adherence to established historical dogma? And what profound truths about ancient Siberian history might still be buried beneath this long-standing quietude, waiting to be unearthed by a more open inquiry? The full implications of this historical void are still being understood. The pervasive silence surrounding Siberia's impossible stone structures began to fray in the late 1990s, not through official disclosure, but through the tenacious efforts of a few independent researchers. Among them was Professor Anatoly Sidorov, a respected but increasingly marginalized geologist from Novosibirsk State University. His initial interest was purely academic, sparked by an obscure reference in a regional geological survey from the 1960s. Sidorov's immediate confusion arose from the survey's brief mention of unusual megalithic formations near the Kuznetsk-Alatau mountain range, a detail inexplicably omitted from subsequent, more detailed maps of the area. He considered this an egregious oversight, given the potential geological and historical significance of such structures. The omission struck him as deliberate, rather than accidental. His official response to this discovery was to request access to original survey documents and to propose an exploratory expedition. However, Sidorov's proposals were met with polite but firm rejections from university and state funding bodies. The justifications provided were vague, citing lack of relevance or insufficient scientific merit, a stark contradiction to the potential groundbreaking nature of his inquiry. These repeated refusals led Sidorov into a deeper, more personal investigation, which exposed a pattern of contradictory documents. He uncovered internal memos from the 1970s referencing anomalous geological features in the same region, often followed by directives to cease further inquiry. These documents suggested a clear, coordinated effort to prevent detailed examination of specific sites, directly contradicting the public narrative of harmless natural formations. The suppression Sidorov faced was multifaceted. His research grants dwindled. His publications on unrelated topics were scrutinized more harshly, and colleagues subtly distanced themselves. He was effectively ostracized from mainstream academic circles, forced to operate outside the official system. This professional isolation marked his descent from respected scholar to a lone, persistent investigator. Modern reanalysis of Sidorov's personal notes and correspondence, posthumously released by his family, reveals a meticulous and increasingly desperate pursuit of truth. He documented eyewitness accounts from local hunters and prospectors who described stone walls and platforms of immense scale, far beyond anything attributed to known ancient cultures. His work became a solitary battle against institutional amnesia. The unanswered question surrounding Professor Sidorov's descent is not merely about the structures he sought, but about the forces that actively sought to prevent his discovery. What knowledge was so sensitive, so disruptive to established paradigms, that it warranted the professional destruction of a dedicated scholar? His story underscores the profound resistance encountered when challenging deeply entrenched historical narratives, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and a trail of suppressed evidence. As Professor Sidorov's isolated research continued, a critical discovery began to emerge, not from direct excavation, but from the painstaking analysis of historical maps, declassified aerial photographs, and early satellite imagery. He started to discern a recurring geometric pattern in the locations of reported anomalous structures across the vast Siberian landscape. These were not random clusters, but appeared to follow deliberate alignments and spatial arrangements. The immediate confusion stemmed from the sheer scale and precision of these patterns. Many formations, when viewed from above, exhibited features like perfect right angles, equidistant spacing over kilometers, and alignments with cardinal directions or astronomical points. Such geometric regularity seemed utterly impossible for natural geological processes and far exceeded the known capabilities of any pre-industrial civilization in the region. The official response, when such observations were tentatively brought forward, remained consistently dismissive. Geologists attributed any apparent patterns to natural fault lines, erosion, or the human tendency to find order in chaos, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. There was no scientific willingness to consider the possibility of artificiality on such a grand scale, especially given the established understanding of Siberian prehistory. However, a closer examination of older, less filtered military reconnaissance photos from the 1960s presented stark contradictions. Some images clearly depicted rectilinear features and massive straight lines carved into the landscape, often partially obscured by vegetation or ice. These details were notably absent or conveniently reinterpreted in later, publicly available geological reports, suggesting a deliberate alteration or downplaying of the visual evidence. The suppression of this particular aspect of the mystery was insidious. Access to high-resolution satellite imagery for these specific remote areas remained restricted for independent researchers for many years. Any attempts by Sidorov or his few collaborators to publish articles highlighting these geometric anomalies in academic journals were met with editorial rejections, often citing a lack of verifiable ground truth or speculative interpretation. Modern reanalysis, utilizing advanced GIS software and newly accessible global satellite data, has allowed contemporary researchers to overlay multiple historical layers. This digital archaeology has begun to confirm Sidorov's early suspicions. The patterns, once dismissed as illusion, are now being meticulously mapped, revealing a network of colossal, intentionally placed structures that span hundreds of kilometers, often covered by permafrost and ancient forests. The unanswered question now intensifies. What intelligence, possessing an understanding of geometry and engineering on an unprecedented scale, created these vast, precise patterns in one of the Earth's most inhospitable regions? The existence of such a sophisticated ancient blueprint etched into the Siberian ice poses a profound challenge to our understanding of human history and the capabilities of civilizations lost to time. The meticulous mapping of the geometric patterns, initiated by Professor Sidorov and continued by a new generation of remote sensing specialists, led to a profound and unsettling discovery. It wasn't merely the existence of patterns, but the unmistakable evidence of advanced engineering principles embedded within them. These colossal structures, often submerged beneath millennia of ice and sediment, revealed a degree of planning and execution that pointed to highly sophisticated builders. Immediate confusion arose from the sheer audacity of the implied construction. Some formations showed evidence of massive earth-moving, precision stone cutting, and hydrological management on a scale previously thought impossible for any civilization predating recorded history. The question of who possessed such capabilities in such a remote and inhospitable region became paramount, challenging every established historical timeline. The official response to these emerging claims of unseen architects was largely one of skepticism and outright rejection. Government-backed geological institutes continued to classify the features as natural anomalies, suggesting that unusual tectonic activity or glacial erosion could create such seemingly deliberate forms. The notion of a lost advanced civilization in Siberia was deemed unscientific and bordering on pseudoscience, particularly in the early 2000s. However, internal reports and geological surveys from the Soviet era, declassified much later, presented significant contradictions. Several documents referenced unnatural stability and anomalous material composition within certain formations, details that were never publicly pursued or explained. These findings directly conflicted with the narrative of purely natural origins, hinting at a suppressed understanding of the site's true nature. The suppression of the unseen architect's theory extended beyond mere dismissal. Researchers who dared to publish papers suggesting artificiality often found their work marginalized, their funding opportunities curtailed, and their professional reputations questioned. This deliberate silence ensured that the concept of an advanced ancient civilization in Siberia remained outside mainstream academic discourse, a topic for fringe theories rather than serious study. Modern reanalysis, leveraging high-penetration, ground-penetrating radar and seismic imaging, has begun to peel back the layers of ice and earth, revealing intricate substructures. These technologies confirm the presence of engineered foundations, interlocking megaliths, and vast interconnected systems that defy natural explanation. The data now strongly support the hypothesis of intelligent design, pushing the boundaries of what is considered historically possible. The unanswered question at the heart of this enigma is not just if these structures were built, but by whom? Who were these unseen architects who mastered geometry, engineering, and construction on such a colossal scale, only to vanish without a trace, leaving behind an indelible blueprint etched into the frozen heart of Siberia? Their identity and purpose remain the most profound and tantalizing mystery of all. As the evidence for the unseen architects mounted, a new, more unsettling layer of the mystery began to emerge, not from the structures themselves, but from the historical context surrounding their discovery and subsequent concealment. Researchers, poring over declassified intelligence files and archived expedition logs, started to uncover a pattern of unusual occurrences and unexplained disappearances linked to areas where these anomalous formations were found. This suggested a more active, perhaps even malevolent, element at play. Immediate confusion arose from the nature of these incidents. They weren't simply accidents or natural hazards. Records spoke of geological teams reporting strange energy fluctuations, equipment malfunctions that defied explanation, and even psychological distress among field personnel. Some accounts, dismissed as anecdotal at the time, described a pervasive sense of being watched, an unsettling presence that seemed to emanate from the ancient sites themselves. The official response to these reports was consistently to downplay or outright deny any connection between the anomalies and the strange incidents. Incidents were attributed to the harsh Siberian environment, faulty equipment, or the psychological strain of isolation. Any suggestion of a link to the impossible structures was met with immediate and firm rejection, often accompanied by directives to focus solely on conventional geological surveys. However, a closer look at internal security reports from the Soviet era revealed striking contradictions. Several classified documents detailed unexplained losses of personnel and equipment in specific zones adjacent to known structural anomalies. These reports often concluded with insufficient data or unforeseen circumstances, but the recurring pattern across different decades and expeditions painted a picture far more sinister than mere accidents. The suppression of these incidents was thorough and systematic. Witness testimonies were often heavily redacted or labeled as unreliable. Any researchers attempting to connect the dots between the structures and the disappearances faced not just academic marginalization, but often direct intervention from state security apparatuses. This deliberate silence created an impenetrable veil over the true nature of the shadow in the steppe. Modern reanalysis, utilizing forensic linguistics on declassified transcripts and cross-referencing known incident locations with Sidorov's mapped patterns, has begun to reveal disturbing correlations. The shadow appears to be more than just a feeling. It suggests an active, deliberate presence, possibly guarding the secrets of the unseen architects or reacting to human intrusion. The nature of this presence, however, remains elusive. The unanswered question now shifts from who built these structures to what protects them. Is the shadow an environmental phenomenon, a technological defense mechanism of the ancient builders, or something far more enigmatic? The chilling implication is that the ancient mystery of Siberia's stone structures is not merely a historical puzzle, but an active, potentially dangerous secret still exerting its influence on the modern world. The persistent inquiries into the shadow in the steppe eventually uncovered a disturbing layer of human complicity in the decades-long obfuscation. It was not merely official dismissal or bureaucratic inertia that kept the truth buried. Evidence began to surface indicating deliberate acts of sabotage and betrayal from within the very scientific and intelligence communities tasked with investigation. This discovery pointed to a calculated effort to misdirect and suppress, orchestrated by individuals with privileged access. Immediate confusion arose from the question of motive. Why would trusted experts, ostensibly committed to scientific truth, actively work against the revelation of such monumental discoveries? The actions documented went beyond professional skepticism. They involved the intentional misfiling of critical data, the discrediting of legitimate findings through fabricated counterarguments, and the strategic removal of key personnel who were close to breakthroughs. The official response to these internal revelations, when they surfaced through leaked documents and whistleblowers, was swift and often brutal. Those accused of exposing the internal machinations faced severe repercussions, ranging from career termination to more drastic measures under the guise of state security. The official narrative consistently painted these individuals as unreliable or paranoid, ensuring their claims were dismissed as conspiracy. However, a collection of declassified internal memos from the late Soviet period, along with fragmented personal journals from exiled researchers, presented undeniable contradictions. These records detailed specific instances where geological reports were altered before public release, and where expeditions reporting anomalous energy readings were abruptly recalled without explanation. One particularly damning entry from a former KGB archivist described a controlled narrative operation designed to maintain the geological anomaly classification at all costs. The suppression of this internal betrayal was meticulous. Key figures involved in the deliberate misdirection often vanished from official records or were reassigned to obscure posts, their roles in the cover-up erased. The true extent of this cold betrayal remained hidden for decades, known only to a select few who benefited from the continued secrecy surrounding Siberia's impossible structures. Modern reanalysis, utilizing advanced data forensics on fragmented digital archives, has begun to reconstruct the network of individuals involved in this internal sabotage. Forensic timelines now clearly illustrate how strategic misinformation campaigns were launched to counter legitimate scientific inquiry. This level of coordinated deception indicates a deeply entrenched interest in preventing the truth from emerging, far beyond simple ideological resistance. The unanswered question that now looms is not just who orchestrated this elaborate deception, but why. What was so profoundly threatening about the Siberian structures that it warranted such a widespread and enduring betrayal of scientific integrity and public trust? And whose interests did this decades-long campaign of lies ultimately serve, keeping the secrets of the unseen architects locked away in the frozen wastes? The layers of betrayal and suppression had created a convoluted historical record, a true labyrinth of memory, where facts were obscured, timelines distorted, and key figures erased. Researchers attempting to piece together the full narrative found themselves navigating a deliberately complex web, where official documents contradicted eyewitness accounts, and crucial information seemed to vanish between archives. This deliberate obfuscation was not merely a side effect of secrecy, it was an active strategy designed to disorient and deter. Immediate confusion arose from the sheer volume of conflicting data. Multiple versions of expedition logs existed for the same events, some with critical details omitted or altered. Personal memoirs of participants often diverged wildly from official reports, creating a fractured reality. This made it nearly impossible to establish a definitive sequence of events or verify the true nature of discoveries made in the field. The official response to any attempt to reconcile these discrepancies was typically dismissive. Historians or investigative journalists who highlighted these inconsistencies were often accused of revisionism or lacking proper access to complete records. The state apparatus maintained a firm grip on the narrative, ensuring that only approved versions of events entered the public consciousness, further solidifying the labyrinth. However, careful cross-referencing of declassified documents with satellite imagery and geological survey data from independent international sources revealed profound contradictions. For instance, official maps from the 1970s showed no significant anomalies in areas where multiple independent reports, later corroborated by satellite scans, clearly indicated large-scale structural formations. These discrepancies suggested a systemic effort to rewrite the geographical and historical truth. The suppression of accurate memory was pervasive. Not only were physical documents altered, but individuals who held inconvenient truths were often subjected to psychological pressure, forced recantations, or simply disappeared from the historical record. The goal was to create a collective amnesia around the most sensitive aspects of the Siberian structures, ensuring that the official truth became the only truth. Modern reanalysis, employing advanced archival forensics and oral history methodologies, has begun to untangle this intricate web. By comparing disparate sources and identifying patterns of alteration, researchers have started to reconstruct a more accurate chronology of discovery and concealment. The process is painstaking, akin to archaeological excavation through layers of deliberately laid misinformation, revealing the true scale of the cover-up. The unanswered question now is how deeply this labyrinth of memory has embedded itself into the cultural and scientific understanding of the region. What fundamental truths about our past, and potentially our future, remain buried within these distorted records? And what would be the true cost of fully navigating this labyrinth, not just for the historical record, but for our understanding of humanity's place in a world far older and stranger than officially acknowledged? After decades spent navigating a labyrinth of manipulated records and suppressed data, a critical breakthrough finally emerged from a previously dismissed geological survey. This survey, originally conducted in the 1980s, had been meticulously re-examined by independent researchers who discovered that its high-resolution subsurface imaging data had been deliberately mislabeled as natural rock formations. When processed with modern algorithms, these images revealed unmistakable evidence of advanced, non-geological structures beneath the visible stone formations of the Siberian plateau. The data presented vast, interconnected chambers and what appeared to be conduits, extending hundreds of meters deep, clearly indicating an artificial subterranean complex of immense scale. The immediate confusion stemmed from the sheer precision and geometric regularity of these subterranean elements. They defied all known natural geological processes and exceeded the engineering capabilities of any historical human civilization. The material composition hinted at by the imaging suggested a density and structural integrity far beyond conventional construction, raising profound questions about the builders and their technology. The official response to these early fragmented findings was consistent with established patterns of suppression. The original survey team members were reportedly reassigned, and their data was either quarantined or integrated into classified projects, effectively removing it from open scientific discourse. Any attempt to publicly discuss the anomalies was met with official statements reaffirming the natural origin of the surface structures, dismissing subsurface imaging as interpretive errors. This revelation created a stark contradiction with decades of official geological reports that had consistently characterized the Siberian structures as purely natural, albeit unusual formations. The newly processed data directly challenged the long-held assertion that no artificial components existed beyond the visible surface. It also conflicted with the narrative that early expeditions had found nothing significant enough to warrant further investigation. The suppression of this specific subsurface evidence was particularly effective due to its technical nature. The complex data required specialized knowledge to interpret, allowing authorities to easily dismiss it as misinterpretation to the general scientific community. Key data files were encrypted or fragmented, making reconstruction a formidable task for external researchers for decades. Modern reanalysis, leveraging advancements in ground-penetrating radar and seismic tomography not available in the 1980s, has confirmed and expanded upon these initial findings. Independent teams, collaborating internationally, have now mapped extensive subterranean networks beneath multiple sites across the Siberian plateau. These networks show consistent architectural principles and materials, suggesting a unified design. The scale of these underground complexes dwarfs the visible surface structures, revealing a hidden world beneath the frozen earth. The unanswered question that now dominates the investigation is the true purpose of these immense subterranean complexes. Were they shelters, power conduits, manufacturing facilities, or something entirely beyond our current comprehension? And what advanced civilization possessed the capability to construct such colossal hidden works, leaving behind only the enigmatic surface stones as their silent sentinels? The mapping of the subterranean complex, initially a triumph of modern investigative technology, soon cast a chilling shadow over the researchers involved. The deeper they delved into the digital reconstruction, the more they uncovered about the scale and complexity of the hidden structures. This knowledge came at a significant personal cost, as the implications of their discoveries began to unravel long-held scientific paradigms and challenge the very fabric of accepted human history. The revelation was not merely about ancient engineering, it was about confronting a truth that powerful entities had gone to extraordinary lengths to bury. Immediate confusion among the research teams quickly turned to apprehension. The sheer technological sophistication implied by the underground structures, their advanced materials, precise geometry, and apparent self-sustaining systems suggested a civilization far beyond anything documented. This directly contradicted the official narrative of human development and prehistory. The data raised questions about the origins of intelligence on Earth and forced a re-evaluation of humanity's unique place in the universe. The official response to these escalating findings was not an embrace of new knowledge, but a renewed and intensified campaign of suppression. Funding for independent research groups studying the Siberian anomalies mysteriously dried up. Key researchers found their academic careers stalled, their publications rejected, and their access to critical data revoked. Those who persisted reported subtle but persistent harassment, including surveillance and attempts to discredit their work. This modern suppression created stark contradictions with the initial, albeit limited, openness surrounding the reanalysis of the 1980s data. Once the full scope of the subterranean structures became apparent, the scientific community, and indeed, the broader public, were once again met with a wall of silence. The narrative shifted from natural geological formations to misinterpretation of complex data, effectively dismissing the tangible evidence. The suppression tactics extended beyond academic pressure. Several independent researchers involved in the mapping project reported unexplained technical malfunctions with their equipment, data corruption, and even home intrusions where nothing was stolen, but files were reportedly accessed. One prominent geologist, who had been vocal about the artificial nature of the structures, suddenly withdrew from the public eye, citing personal reasons and refusing further comment. His sudden silence became a micro-hook, hinting at external pressures. Modern reanalysis of these events indicates a coordinated effort to control the information flow, reminiscent of the Cold War-era tactics used to manage the initial discoveries. The pattern of official denial, academic isolation, and personal pressure suggests a powerful, unseen hand guiding the narrative. The aim was clearly to maintain the status quo, preserving established historical timelines and avoiding any truth that might destabilize existing power structures. The unanswered question now is not just what lies beneath the stone, but why this knowledge is so fiercely guarded. What profound implications would a full understanding of these structures unleash upon humanity? And what is the ultimate price, not just for the individuals who dare to seek the truth, but for a society built on foundations that might prove to be entirely fabricated? The cost of knowing, it seemed, was far greater than anyone had initially anticipated. The relentless pressure and escalating suppression surrounding the Siberian discoveries finally began to fracture the carefully constructed edifice of official denial. Despite the coordinated efforts to silence researchers and discredit their findings, the sheer volume of corroborating data, now cross-referenced by multiple independent teams, became impossible to contain. The unraveling began with a series of leaked documents, initially dismissed as forgeries, which detailed high-level discussions within state security apparatuses regarding the Siberian Anomaly Containment Protocol. Immediate confusion rippled through intelligence communities and academic circles alike. These leaked memos, though fragmented, consistently referenced non-terrestrial origin and pre-human intelligence in connection with the Siberian structures. This terminology directly contradicted decades of official statements and classified geological reports, which had steadfastly maintained a purely natural explanation for the formations. The sheer audacity of the claims, now supported by internal communications, forced a re-evaluation of every dismissal that had come before. The official response was initially to double down on denial, labeling the leaks as a disinformation campaign. However, the sheer volume and internal consistency of the documents, some dating back to the 1960s, made this increasingly difficult. The contradiction was stark: public statements of natural formations versus private discussions of advanced, alien construction. The credibility of government agencies, particularly those responsible for scientific oversight, began to erode under the weight of this discrepancy. This deliberate suppression, once an impenetrable wall, started to show cracks. The leaked documents revealed a timeline conflict, indicating that authorities were aware of the artificial nature of the strews, which is far earlier than previously acknowledged. Some internal reports described initial expeditions encountering technological components that were subsequently removed and analyzed in secret facilities. These components were never mentioned in any public record. The modern reanalysis of these leaked documents, cross-referenced with previously dismissed witness accounts and fragmented scientific papers, began to paint a terrifyingly clear picture. It became evident that the scientific community had been systematically misled for generations. Key geological surveys had been deliberately manipulated, and dissenting scientists had been professionally isolated or worse. The unraveling was not just about the truth of Siberia, but about the integrity of the institutions tasked with safeguarding scientific knowledge. The unanswered question now shifted from what built the structures to who orchestrated this monumental deception and why they believed it was necessary to keep humanity in the dark. What catastrophic implications did they foresee if the truth about an ancient non-human intelligence on Earth were to become public? And what other truths, equally profound and suppressed, might still lie buried beneath layers of official silence waiting for their own moment of unraveling? The foundations of accepted history were trembling, threatening to collapse entirely. The public exposure of the Siberian Anomaly Containment Protocol and the subsequent scientific corroboration marked a definitive turning point in the saga of Siberia's impossible stone structures. The sheer weight of evidence, once fragmented and suppressed, coalesced into an undeniable narrative, forcing a global re-evaluation of humanity's past. This revelation, propelled by whistleblowers and independent investigative journalism, finally brought the decades-long cover-up into the harsh light of public scrutiny. Immediate confusion among the global populace quickly gave way to widespread disbelief and, for many, a profound sense of betrayal. The established timeline of human civilization, taught in schools and enshrined in academic texts, suddenly seemed incomplete, if not entirely false. Scientists grappled with the implications of an advanced, pre-human or non-terrestrial intelligence having left such monumental traces on Earth, challenging fundamental assumptions about evolution and technological progression. The official response, after an initial period of intense silence, shifted from outright denial to carefully worded acknowledgements. Several governments, facing unprecedented public pressure and the erosion of trust, issued statements admitting to previously undisclosed data regarding anomalous geological formations in Siberia. These admissions, however, were often vague, avoiding direct confirmation of non-terrestrial origins and instead framing the structures as unexplained phenomena requiring further study. This new official stance presented its own set of contradictions. While acknowledging anomalies, it conspicuously omitted any reference to the advanced technology or the specific non-terrestrial origin terminology found in the leaked internal documents. The official narrative struggled to reconcile the immense scale and precision of the structures with any known natural processes, leaving a significant gap between public statements and the deeper truths already exposed. The era of absolute suppression had ended, but a new form of information management emerged. Access to the Siberian sites remained heavily restricted, now under the guise of international scientific collaboration rather than state secrecy. Furthermore, detailed information regarding the advanced components reportedly recovered from the sites remained classified, constituting a clear missing record in the public narrative. Modern reanalysis, fueled by the partial truth, focused on the immediate implications for archaeology, geology, and astrobiology. Researchers began to theorize about the purpose of these structures, their builders' ultimate fate, and the potential impact on Earth's early history. The unfinished legacy of these enigmatic stone structures now lay in humanity's hands, a testament to a forgotten past and a challenge to future understanding. The unanswered question persists. What was the true purpose of these immense structures, and what became of their builders? While the fact of their existence and artificiality is now widely accepted, the complete story of their construction, their function, and the ultimate reason for their abandonment remains elusive. The Siberian structures stand as an enduring monument to an ancient, profound mystery, a silent challenge to our comprehension of our own planet's history and our place within the cosmos. We have journeyed through the chilling narrative of Siberia's impossible stone structures, from their initial discovery to the decades of deliberate suppression and the eventual reluctant unraveling of official truths. What began as an archaeological curiosity transformed into a profound challenge to our understanding of history, science, and the very fabric of our reality. This is not merely a tale of ancient ruins or a speculative legend. This is a documented account of a global cover-up, a testament to the lengths to which institutions will go to control narratives that threaten established paradigms. The implications extend far beyond the remote Siberian wilderness, touching upon our collective understanding of human origins, technological development, and our place in the universe. The lingering consequences of this hidden history demand our attention. The structures remain, silent and imposing, a constant reminder of an intelligence that predates our own, and a testament to truths deliberately obscured. Our responsibility now lies in confronting these uncomfortable facts, in questioning the narratives we have been given, and in seeking a more complete, unvarnished understanding of our world. The mystery does not fully rest. The forces that built these colossal monuments, or the reasons for their abandonment, continue to echo across the vast, frozen expanse of Siberia. The silence of the permafrost holds secrets still, secrets that whisper of a past far stranger and more complex than we are often allowed to imagine. We invite you to share where you are listening from and what time it is for you, as you ponder the weight of these revelations. Until next time, remain vigilant. The truth is often buried, but rarely ever truly gone.